land office on increasing root growth in dune grasses. Very good subject. And so we, our problem has been that the GLO basically is planning on restoring the Texas coastal sand dunes. And the issue we have with that is that the plants, the dune grasses, after the dunes were formed, they plant the dune grasses to help maintain the integrity of the dune with the root structure holding the sand particles. So we're already aware of that, but for those of you who aren't, I'll tell you. And so I've been a photographer most of my life, and but I'm also a biologist by education from Sam Houston State. Any Bearcats in here? I knew there'd be at least one or two. So anyhow, I ran across this product. It's rice hull ash, and it's a waste byproduct of the rice milling industry, and it holds water. 4 pounds of it will hold a gallon of water. And so if you put it in the soil, when you water your plants, the water will normally percolate beyond the root zone and be lost to the plants. And so if you put this ash in there, it'll hold that water in the matrix of the ash. And I thought, gee, what a great product for such. It's a very green product. As black as it is, it's still green. And they burn the rice hulls after they separate them from the rice in order to create electricity for the plant. And so burning the rice hulls essentially creates enough electricity to run one of the largest rice mills in the South. So I saw it accidentally with one of my clients and thought, gee, what an incredible product. This will hold water like that. And in the lab, we actually saw it hold water for 30 days. Now, it's not going to do that in the field because you got wind and environmental actions that won't let it do that. But in the lab, you've got pretty much ideal situation. And so I talked to the GLO about it, and I said, I think this might work out pretty good with our dune grasses because we plant them in the latter part of February, and we have 3 months before hurricane season, big tides, bull tide, so forth. And so the dune grasses that are planted require 6 months basically to establish themselves. And so when you just plant dune grasses in 3 months, there's a good chance, like last year when we did our first experiment with it, that you're going to lose your plants. The tides come in and just basically wash them out. And so just doing this all by itself. Sorry? PDF, so you have to. Okay, I can do that. Oh, okay. So I got to thinking, well, we can do this and we can grow the grass, but there's never been a product like this, to my knowledge, and I've done a lot of research on it, that we could get the roots to grow horizontal in addition to growing vertical. So we get a bigger root matrix, right? Going horizontal. And so what we did was this, Brenda arranged for this fellow in this machine back there to make troughs or furrows. They're about 10 inches deep. And so what we did, we filled up the troughs with the rice hull ash. And we also used humates, which are 75-million-year-old compost, basically. I don't know if you know much about them. Most people don't, so don't feel bad. And then we had another product called Mitagrow. And Mitagrow has indole-3, butyric acid, which is a root stimulant, and mycorrhizae, also something you probably wouldn't know much about because you're probably not a PhD in botany. But these are things that help the roots grow. So we blended that together like that. It's a mess, I got to tell you. And the ash is a micron-sized ash. It's very small, micron, yeah. And so the guy that invented the Mitagrow is the guy filling the kitty tub there with salt water. We're using salt water right out of San Luis Pass. And as you see in the background, oops. Oh, my fingers are a little too big to do this. Anyhow, so we're putting the plants 18 inches apart and filling the troughs with the blend. And so it's a happy coincidence that Brenda had a grant from
Texas Master. Yes.
Master Naturalist.
Yes. I was inspired to submit for a grant offered by Texas Master Naturalist this chapter because I love the beach and all it has to offer. I wanted to find out how I could help to protect our area here in Brazoria County from erosion. The project I proposed was to plant approved seed grasses in the existing dunes. Many volunteers came and we planted 400 plants near that. With the dune protection project, I have learned that I cannot control Mother Nature. Jim will talk about that more in a minute. I also learned to go with the flow. The tides come in and the tides go out. Some of those tides, along with high wind, has brought in the sand to the plants to build the dunes. And lastly, I have learned that volunteering is addicting. To write down and log in all of your hours while you volunteer. The shirt I'm wearing will show you more about that. The volunteering is addicting. Jim and I spend a lot of time on this project. We go like almost every day. Yeah. Okay. See my shirt.
Is it working? Let me see. Oh, yeah. So Brenda had a little problem which she wasn't aware of. She had the plants, and I said, where are you going to plant them? She said, well, we're going to plant them in the beach. And I said, do you have a permit for that? You know, you can't do a thing in Texas without a permit from the GLO on the coastline. Texas is the only state that owns its coastline. And so if you want to take a bucket of sand out of that coastline, you got to get a written permit from the GLO, General Land Office. And so I said, well, you know, I have a permit. We'd welcome you into our, experiment. And we had to get Joe Ripple, who's the head of permits for Brazoria County, and he approved it, and the rest is history. So anyhow, this is y'all basically, Texas Master Naturalist, planting in the background all the plants. And this is how they line up in this manner here, where the trough is about 10 inches deep, and then the troughs are 18 inches apart. And so this way we're able to get the roots. Let me see what else happens here. So what happens is when the roots are going to follow water. Well, if they're going to follow water, there's water in the ash. It'll hold that water. And so the roots will follow that ash along the trough. And then it'll meet the roots coming from the other plant, and you get a mass of roots there. And so that is something that's going to be able to help maintain the integrity of that dune, because you've got a bigger root mass, not only just vertical, which is the traditional way of planting them, but by planting them in that trough. And so we put out 400 plants, and this last year, and we proved our point. We had a 27.5-inch root trough in 30 days. That's spectacular. I'd never seen anything like that. But these nutrients really make a difference. And the reason being that we use them is because if you put the plants without any nutrients, you just plant them, they struggle to survive, to be truthful. And matter of fact, we were down at the site this morning, and we'd had a big bull tide come in, and it pretty well wiped out the control without the amendments. The other side, with the amendments, were healthy, and we only lost about a fourth of those. Now, if you notice down here, if I can do this properly, right here, we had these timbers on the beach. And so in my wise ways, I said, we better put these timbers, keep people from driving around on our grass because they're not going to know. So we did. Well, turns out that was a mistake. There you can see them there. That's the problem. All the sand accreted onto the timber. Well, dune grasses grow because they accrete sand. And so the sand was being not replenished onto the grass, but stopped by the timbers. Big mistake. So we removed it and took our chances on the trucks. But you're not supposed to have a truck down there anyhow in this particular area. And then Mike Mullenweg of the Brazoria County Parks at San Luis Pass said, we'll watch them for you. And then they put up more barriers, but just screen. And so we put up a sign, that's what and so here is an aerial view. This is, there we go. So look, on the left side is the control. Not too many plants in there. Look at the right side where you can see the plants. Now this is up about 20 feet, something like that from a drone. So we're not down too tight because then we couldn't see the whole plot. The plot's 20 by 40 feet. There's 26 rows in, 13 per plant, or 13 per, if I can do this right. And there you can see feeding onto the plant, which is the way nature would intend to have that done. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the plants growing, and there's a big shout out to Texas Master Naturalist for helping us do this. Not helping us, y'all did it. And so the plants are in the sand, and this will give you an idea. We have cordgrass, bitter panicum, and sea oats in there. And we just kind of divvied them up equally and put them in. This is not an MIT science project. It's basically what we could come up with on our own. So Brenda came down, and Brenda gets a lot of credit for this because she monitors it, and some of y'all help her and go down on a very regular basis, meaning 2 or 3 times a week, and checking all of our plants and measuring them. And we're finding that we're getting more root growth than foliage. They're kind of about the same, but the root growth is stronger. And that's the, oh, so there. See that little root right there? All right, that's in the fur. It's only 6 or so inches long, as you can see. But the problem is you make mistakes in these things, but that's why they're experiments, And so last year we used a certain formula of humates, liquid humates, mixed in with the ash and and the mitochondria and the mycorrhizae. And this year, my scientist came down from Mineola up in East Texas, and I had gotten another process of humates, and we were going to experiment with it, but we didn't plan on experimenting with this particular plot. But he grabbed it by mistake, and he brought the wrong humates. And so last year, when we had 27.5 inches, this year we only had 6 inches. I talked to the guy that made the process for the humates last year for an hour and a half organic chemistry lesson. Now, I'm a biologist, but I'm not an organic chemist. I mean, I have a general understanding of it, but let me tell you, it's complicated. And it's very important because of the way they extract the humans and the fulvic acids out of the raw ore. And I'm definitely not going to bore you to death with that. But the fact of the matter is that his process gives a lot of shorter chain molecules that the other process doesn't. And it has to do with going through the cell membrane. Now, you guys are naturalists, and I know you need to know this stuff. You don't have to know it, but it's a good idea to understand the basic roots of why these things happen. And so he's my mentor in humates, and humates are extremely important. I really recommend y'all Google or Chat GPT or something about humates and understand how important they are in providing nutrients to the plants. And instead of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is your basic fertilizer. And so, anyhow, let me make sure. This is plant we sacrificed after a month, and then this is and down in the trunk, and this came out of this area here, and you can see the black in there. So you can see the difference here between this plant and the control plant. No amendments, no anything on it. Just stick it in the ground and hope it lives. This, we put the nutrients in, and you can see the difference there. Sure what that's a picture of here. And then you can see again the ash. Now it's interesting to me because we work with the GLO, not just this project, but other projects in my life. And it's interesting what, to me, their priorities are as to my priorities. And their priorities are, they don't want the beach to be black, right? I mean, rice hull ash, well, it's kind of like 10 inches deep in the ground. There's no reason for it to migrate up. And so, but their concern, to my way of understanding it, is that they don't want a black beach. They want the normal brown. Not sure what the difference is, but nonetheless, so we're interested in having this being a nutrient and water supply to the plant. And they're interested in, well, will it turn our beach black? So just a word of warning, if you ever deal with the GLO, try to understand what they're trying to do, because it's not always going to be the same as what you're trying to do. So anyhow, this is the control rows. There's hardly any plants, and these are the amended rows. If I can do this right. These are amended. And today we were there, they were 3 times that size this morning. I just couldn't get it into the presentation today. And we'll back up, and you can see these little guys here. And they're just basically, a bull tide pretty much wiped it out. Last year, Beryl wiped it out. That's why we had to do it again this year. So, here we go. So there is the plants, and you can see they're leafy and they're well done. So what the issue is, you've got 3 months before the hurricane season. Takes normally 6 months to establish these plants, which means to get the roots down to hold the plant in place. And what we're doing is by using the amendments, we pick up 3 months in 3 months. Instead of 6 months, we can get them to where they need to be in 6 months, or even better, actually. And so that's the whole purpose of this project that Brenda and I have been working on. So, let me see. All right. Well, we also, as a Christmas Bay project, Christmas Bay Foundation project, we made these signs. You can see the sign there. And we put that on there, hoping that'd keep the trucks off too. So, matter of fact, today, with the help of the Gulf Coast Rescue Squad, furnishing a boat and a driver, and one of our board members, Eric Boatman, we went and put those signs out on the rookeries and to keep wade fishermen from walking on the rookery, because those little skimmers and reddish egrets and American oyster catchers and stuff lay their eggs right on the shell. Actually, it's marl, the broken up shell, but they'll lay it right on there. And I guarantee you, if you're not really watching and paying attention, you'll step on them. And the wade fishermen aren't doing that on purpose, but they're tired. They've been waiting. They're going to go sit down on some dry land. And we found that if we put these signs up, you prevent 2 things from happening. One is they don't come on the island and step on the eggs, which is something we're trying to avoid at all costs. And the other is when they get up to the island, all of the birds get up in the air. And I'm sure if you've been around the bay, you've seen this more than once. Well, what does that do? Well, one, it opens it to predation. And seagulls are terrible about eggs and get the yolk. Secondly, you're exposing them to the sun. I don't know if you were out there, but it's warm. And so you start having that sun, you're going to have cooked eggs, basically. So you want to keep the waders off of those islands. And we put out these signs today as a Christmas Bay Foundation project. We use that sign there to help protect. And then Mike Mullenweg in the San Luis Pass Park put up more barriers to keep the birds from, keep the trucks from doing it, running over. These are just measurements that Brenda has come out and these are the, this is bitter panicum, I believe. And so these are some of the observations we made during the time. This needs to, we have to do this a report every month for 6 months. And so we learn something every time. Generally, it's a screw up on our part that we learned, and then we had to fix it. But that's what experiment. And so we appreciate y'all's help. And I also want to say thank you to Texas Master Naturalist on a broader venue of just being there and helping educate the public and make them aware of the importance of these estuaries. Thank you for your attention to me. You have anything to add? No, kind of shy. So, and go ahead. What is it? What's she saying?
How a whale's nursery grow? I believe that's seed.
They'll come up off the roots. So if the nodules on the roots, they come up, they spread that way.
Good question, but I can find out.
Huh?
Testing how well nursery properly wrap. Are they dividing it?
That's Brenda's world. We got it from Will's Nursery. These were 1 gallon plants. And I don't know how they probably divide them instead, most likely. And divide them and put them in pots, go down the way that way. Any other questions? Yeah, Eric? 6 months to establish. But the tall ones, that takes a bit longer. But just to get them established, we having the roots established and holding the plant in place on its own naturally is about 6 months. And we have 3 plant species up there because those are the most common on the coast. Any other questions? Huh?
What are the 3 plant species?
Paniculata, Uniola paniculata, COs, Amrum, and bitter panicum. Those are the 3. CO, bitter panicum, and Spartana papers. Cordgrass. Yeah, you're familiar with the Spartana alterniflora probably, which is the one that grows in the water. And then the patents grows on it. They're both very capable of using salt water. Matter of fact, that's how they grow. But the patents generally is on the land and it's submersible land. And then the alternative flora grows pretty much in water. And you'll see it. I've worked with different organizations, plant Spartina alternative flora, in order to help protect the shorelines to keep things from eroding. So anyhow, check back with us in another 4 months. We'll tell you how, well, Brenda will tell you, I probably won't be here. But it seems like our project is working, and we checked it this morning. We had to come back with the formula that we used last year and poured on the plants on one row, and then we took the other process and poured it on another row just to be fair, you know. But it has to do with the molecule chain that is in each different extraction process. And so we did that again this morning. We have permission from GLO and from Joe Ripple. Any other questions? Okay.
No, but I have a
Oh, here we go.
I don't know if you remember, but you gave me a bag of the ash for a door prize. So during the break, I'm going to hand out tickets and we'll see who wins that. And the solution that your buddy gave us too, which was a nice gift. So
Yeah, the ash, we always kind of was thinking it might be worth marketing to the gardener, but the problem is you open the ash up and
yeah,
it's in the air. And so that's why we mixed it with mulch or compost. And we also mix it with the liquid humates and the liquid mitagrow because it'll bind it and it won't just be floating in the air and turn everything pretty much black. So yeah.
is that
Yeah, generally by the truckload.
yeah. Oh,
But we basically have it for commercial use. I have it in my yard. My yard's a jungle, and we have hibiscus and Asian jasmine and frangipani and bougainvillea and just a ton of plants. My wife has a wonderful rose bed that just goes going crazy. Now I live in California now. I'm a native Houstonian, and I tell you, I was so happy today to be out of Christmas Bay.
Yes, sir. Do you have any thoughts on why rice hull ash
Rice salt ash.
And any other ash. My understanding is ash is potassium oxide is one of the major plant foods, so I do not doubt it would help plant grow, but what's the secret? Thinking of water, or why is it different than other ash?
Well, I'll tell you, I happen to know.
That's why I asked it.
The rice salt ash that the company that I distribute it for, they don't distribute it for this. They distribute it to the steel industry. And you go, how different that is. Well, it's hollow, 98% hollow. And so when they put it in the tundish, you know, where they take molten steel and they pour it out, you've probably seen that on TV. They put it on top of that, and it basically keeps the molten steel from making slag. And when they had to get the slag, they got to what? Take it back into the furnace, melt it, and take it out and make a pour. Well, by putting the ash on it, which does not enter into the equation, it keeps the heat in and doesn't make slag. And so the it allows them to make more pours without having to go back in the furnace, and it costs them money every time they have to do that. So they buy thousands of tons of this from the company, and I'm the only guy in the company. I'm not actually in the company, but I sell their stuff, and I'm the only guy that sells it for horticultural, agricultural production. And we work with different areas, different municipalities use it. If we use it in, I tell you, one of the most effective places in a municipality is in the medians. And I want you to know, go stand out in a median for about 15 minutes. You will need water. The heat and the wind from the cars going by, basically you got a constant 50, 60 mile an hour wind. What does that do to plants? It pulls the water out of the stomata on the bottom side of the leaf. And so these plants need that water. And we, in Rancho Mirage, where I live, they put it in all of their medians. And I used to go by and look at them and just, gee, why don't they do something about these plants? They're dying. None of them are dying now. They have it in all their medians. Also, back to your question back there, the process, the company that I work with, we're the only ones that make this stuff. Yes, there's lots of companies that burn rice hulls, but we burn it in a proprietary combustion process, and it creates amorphous silica. The other companies burn rice hulls, doing the same thing, but they're just crystalline silica. It's a different type of silica. Just like I found out about humates, not all humates are created equal. And so the humates that we used for last year were totally different than the extraction process that we used on this year. And so we went back to our regular humates, and there's a fellow up in Sulphur Springs, Texas, that created this project, created this extraction process. And it's extremely complicated. And I'm not saying you couldn't understand it. I'm saying I can't explain it. So, but it's very interesting. And I've gotten a lot deeper into my botany than I would have before, trying to understand how this penetrates the cell membrane so that the plant can absorb the nutrients to grow. Is that enough of that? Okay, no more questions? All right. You want to see some pictures? And here you guys are. This is our team this year. And it's all Master Naturalist plus me. So thank you all for participation. Because it's not an easy job. It's fun because you're outdoors, but nonetheless, you're still working. All right, so that's me. There's enough of me. So we'll start off with an easy one. This is, the rose cake food. And I'm going to give you some little information on each of these pictures to help you improve your work. We're the spokesperson for these critters. They can't speak. So. And so by learning your photography better, the more chances are people are going to notice it. And one way to figure this out is if you ever stand in a magazine rack in the store, look at how you look at a magazine. Go on. Probably 1, 2, 3, 50 pages a second. You're just going through to see what jars your memory or mind. Our goal is to stop them and look at that picture and then perhaps read about what the picture is about and create an awareness that these animals need to be saved and they need to be protected. That's what Christmas Bay Foundation does, is we protect and preserve Christmas Bay and the surrounding estuary. And so anytime that you get a good picture and have something that's educational to it, people will look at that picture and then see what it's about. But if it's just a picture that they can take, maybe not so much, unless they just happen to be interested in roseate spoonbills or something. So this picture was taken in High Island. Everybody know about High Island? You should have been there last month. It's one of those kind of things. You should have been there yesterday. Why? Anybody? The migration. All those birds are coming in from the northern part of South America across the Gulf of Mexico. Oops. Well, beautiful Mexico. And so they all come in and they mainly head to High Island. Now, interesting thing about how the Christmas Bay Foundation was based on a warbler. I used to have a cabin on Arcadia Reef down by Rattlesnake Point in Christmas Bay. It's the far west end of Christmas Bay. And one day I was washing dishes on my sink and I had a window out onto the reef there and a lot of spartina growing there. And I noticed a warbler. And I said, little guy, what are you doing here? You belong in the piney woods. But he had just come in across the Gulf. And so I noticed him. I put a little water for him. I didn't have any bird seed. Not really sure what blackbird and warblers eat. Anyhow, so I watched him, and then the next week I found him. He had died. He was exhausted, and he just didn't make it. So about that time, Cy or Sylvia that ran Cy's bait camp there at Christmas Bay. It's a long tradition there. They're no longer there now. I'll be surprised if they're actually still alive. But her and her husband had a bait camp. And I had kind of ruffled Cy's feathers when I first came to Christmas Bay back in the early 70s because they had 2 shrimp boats. And they would get the shrimp out of the bay. And that's pretty innocuous, you would think. But not really, because shrimp boats drag a net. Well, Christmas Bay at that time was the last and the only bay on the upper Texas coast that had seagrasses. And guess what those nets were doing? They were just ripping that grass apart. And I saw that and I said, I said, you're basically destroying their cover for the shrimp. And I said, do you think you could maybe not shrimp in the bay? Well, Jim, that's how we make a living. And I said, I know, but you were losing our seagrass. And so after talking about it over burgers for months, she finally decided that maybe they could do something, and they sold their license. One victory for the environmentalists. And so she still got her shrimp and everything, but bought it from somebody. And so we became friends. And she told me one day, she said, the townhouses across the Blue Water were planning on digging a line underneath the Blue Water Highway and dropping their effluent into Christmas Bay. And I was, that's not a good thing. And especially up at the back part of the bay, because there's really not a lot of water there. So you can imagine all the issues that would be involved there. And she said, can you help stop them? And I don't have a lot of, experience in doing things like that, but I knew somebody that might help me. I talked to a buddy of mine about it, and he knew this environmental attorney called Jim Blackburn, who wrote the book that these pictures are going to be your see. And so he had us over for lunch. He owned a restaurant, and we talked, and I said, told him the problem, and he said, well, let me see what I can do about it. You got any money? I said, nope, got no money. I just need your help. And so he said, all right, we'll see what we can do. And so he ended up actually winning them their permission to not take it across the Blue Water Highway, because what he ended up doing is saying, well, you got to put the outfall with 1,000-foot radius in 3 feet deep of water. Y'all know Christmas Bay? How many places in Christmas Bay that are readily accessible with that kind of depth near the shoreline? You're going to have to take it way out in the bay to get that depth. And they decided it was cheaper to put it past the 3rd bar, and we won. And so we didn't get any affluent in the bay, and it still remains one of the most pristine bays in the upper Texas coastal system. And so anyhow, so we're talking, and I said, Jim, you're a birder, aren't you? And he said, oh, yeah. And the reason he did it because he likes to kayak and fish Christmas Day. So it kind of hit home to him. And so I said, well, what's your favorite bird? He said, well, the black-burning warbler. That was that little warbler. And kind of foretold his coming to help us out. So it always gets me about that, because the serendipity of us having a black-burning warbler on the coast, and that Blackburn came and helped us out. And we formed the Christmas Bay Foundation shortly after that, and that was back in 1999. So we've been around about 26 years now, and we do what we can to help preserve the bay. Why did you move to California?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I was photographing Hurricane Harvey. That's what I did. I was a photojournalist and photographer. And Hurricane Harvey was a pretty substantial storm, and I kind of specialize in that kind of stuff. So we were gone about 10 days shooting for Build magazine. It's one of the largest news publications in the country, and in Europe, basically. And we were gone about 10 days, living in shelters, in the pickup, and so forth, photographing all the destruction and things that had happened, which was quite a bit. And we got back, and my wife was in bed in the middle of the afternoon. I said, honey, she's pretty active. And I said, what's going on, She had asthma, and it was from the black mold in the air from everybody pulling sheetrock out of their houses that flooded. And it set off asthma. She normally didn't have it. First time I've only known her 50-something years. And so first time I ever noticed her to have a problem like that. So I said, we got to get out of here because it's not going to get any better. And so she had some girlfriends. She's a painter. She had some girlfriends and in Southern California. So we drove over there, and about New Mexico, she started clearing up, drying out basically. So we stayed there. We rented a house, stayed there for about a month. Said, okay, everything ought to be good by now. Well, it wasn't. We got back, and no sooner hit Harris County than she started having the problem again. The houses still had the sheetrock in the yard. It was a devastating hurricane if any of y'all were around. And it took a long time to clean that hurricane mess up. So we ended up going back to California, and that's, well, it's almost 8 years ago now. And Hurricane Harvey is long since gone, but it's funny. I'm sorry. Well, it it worked out for her, you know, and she had her girlfriends there, and everything worked out. They're all painters, and one thing after another. But that's why we're in California. So, but I come to Texas as often as I can. Fine. Every February, you'll see me here picking up crab traps with our help, John Blankenship back there, and his brother Jim, and Gulf Coast Rescue Squad comes out. We all go out and pick up the bandy crab traps. You're more than welcome to join us. So we'll get more boats in this necessary. So let's look at some pictures for a minute. And all of these pictures basically have been published in one form or another, magazine, brochure, or annual report, whatever. And you'll recognize the white pelican that's taken down there, not too far from where our family is at. This was taken by my cabin by Arcadia Reef in the early morning fog. One good thing about having a cabin is you get to see the weather, and every once in a while you get lucky and there's something in the weather that's of interest. So this is a foggy morning, and I use a kayak quite a bit, or did use a kayak. My back doesn't think it's a good idea anymore. And so, but I use a ghillie. Do you know what a ghillie is? Ghillie is basically a camouflage netting. And it's like a poncho. I use a ghillie made out of mosquito netting because in Texas it's really hot. And the mosquito netting allows wind blow through. And then it's got little pieces of material that look like leaves that are sewed onto it. And then you put a little there. The one I have, the sack that the ghillie fits in also serves as a head mask for you. And I found my personal experience is that when you're kayaking to get a group of birds, not to kayak to them, set yourself up with the wind blowing to them, and then just hunker down in the kayak and let the wind blow you to them. And that way you can shoot and they don't get disturbed and they continue doing what they're doing. I mean, you ever heard roseates grumbling around while they're fishing for their shrimp? They grumble. You know, who knows what they're talking about? But they may. I'd never heard it until I'd done this and then go in. But I will tell you that if you could cover your hands and your face, even without a shirt on, in a 25-foot kenner, they don't bother. They just think it's a log. But if they see your face, see the eyes or your hands, they're gone. So something to think about. And if you're really serious about taking pictures of birds, get a ghillie and a kayak. Learn to kayak. It's one of my favorite shots. This is why I do. Now, what the camera does inside the netting, the camera's on the outside. It's got camo. You can buy a camo that fits on your lens. Why can't they make white lenses? I have no idea. But I guess to set them apart from Nikon. But you can buy a material that fits on your lenses, and that'll help you there. So it's a roseate, and you can tell by the background with the motor there that it's a telephoto. But I'm not more than 6 or 7 feet away from it. Reddish egret. And that's taken right there at size, I suppose. A little egret, see the yellow spots. And that's taken at High Island. Now, rare to get two oyster catchers together. That's taken with a 1,200 millimeter lens. You're not going to have one of those in your back pocket. Those are unusual, but Canon loaned me one, so I could try to get a shot of them. These were right there by my cabin, and they've been hanging out at my cabin, but 200 millimeter lens just won't do them any justice. So 1,200 puts them right in your face. This is Dr. Baldoff from the Houston Museum of Natural Science. And this is what got us started on putting up signs, do not disturb. Because he's on, as you can see, all of the, right up here, all the birds that are nesting. And that's on, that's down on the west end of Drum Bay. And he was putting that out, and I came over to introduce myself and asked him what he was doing. And he didn't like cabins, and I had one. I wasn't sure what I was going to do about that. But we got to be friends because he knew I was trying to help nature and protect it. And so he's the one that actually started us putting those signs out. That's why. See that egg? See the shell? Very difficult to see them. And if you're not looking for them, you're going to step on them. That's a little skimmer chick. See the top beak? It's a little longer. This Dr. Baldoff and I put these bird nesting platforms out on Bird Island in the middle of San Luis. Gosh, 25 or 30 years ago. And every one of them had chicks. They all, it was very successful. We put a dozen out. And after the storms and everything, we ran things. They're all gone now. But we certainly enhanced the production of great blue herons. Brown pelican, they have made a huge return to our coast. Going down from Causeway down to San Luis Pass, I counted at least 100 today. And in little groups, 8 to 12 or so. And they love to ride the thermals along the houses along the beach. And I remember I first got my cabin back in the early 70s. You just did not see brown pellet. Now we've got a bunch of them. Geese coming into land in the evening back to the roost. This is size shrimp boat. This picture is at least 40 years old. But see the difference in shooting something like this has got more visual impact as a silhouette than it would have just a straight shot of that. And that's what stops people when they're looking through a magazine. This is patch of marsh grass, basically, but this picture was chosen by the Trust for Public Land for their poster. I'm very proud of that picture. And birding, this is Artist Boat, which is a group in Galveston. It's an environmental agency, and out observing birds with their binoculars. Headed to go fishing out. That's down around Port Aransas. But I'm a big kayak. So I have a tendency to put kayaks, shoot pictures of them at Galveston Bay. This is the island that I was telling you about my cabin was on. And this is the cover of the book of Texas Bays. And that's just me on a pretty day. You know, I never understood quite why they liked it as the cover, but it certainly combines all the ingredients of nature right there. This picture has an interesting story. Right in here, the birds were working. If you know what I mean, they're gathering shrimp that's being pushed to the surface by the fish. And I was tunnel focused on those to get out there and throw a towel into the middle of that. And I was looking at that, and I looked to the right and left because I was coming out of Churchill into Coal Pass. And I looked just to make sure I didn't get run over. And I looked up and I saw that cloud and everything. So the lesson to be learned from this picture is look at everything. Don't get tunnel focused on something. And this is a good establishing picture to show you an area that you're going to photograph. You know, try to get a big overall shot and then go for tighter shots. This is after one of the hurricanes down in South Texas. You know, water like tornadoes, water spouts. Well, that's what they can do. They come in onto the coast. That's a water spout did that damage. Imagine if you're in that water spout. It tore up that beach. This is about midway between San Luis Pass and Sides. And I just love the little pink in the reflection. That's the first time I've ever gotten shot from the highway. My wife loves this picture. Don't ask me why. Well, yeah, she doesn't like snakes and alligators and stuff. But this is above our bed. And I go, honey, why are you putting those? So it's not an alligator. Alligator. In other words, it's coming out from underneath that, you know. And this was taken at Bastrop State Park. There's a lot of alligators. I don't know if you want to take a picture of an alligator. That's the place to go. They don't seem to bother you. And of course, you never know. But anyhow, I was on the pier, and that's about it. A big gator. You can tell it from the nose to the eyes.
Brett, thin,
Yeah. Brad Finn, right?
Brett,
Brad Finn.
Brett, City Park.
Bastrop. Mm-hmm. What's he saying?
Not that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Brazos Bend. A lot of gators. This is a redfish. This is in Field and Stream on a story on Texas red fishing. Get in tight if you can, and there's something there graphic to look at. You know, it's basically a mullet, but it's not your typical mullet picture. And flounder to show how it blends with the background. It's an ambush fish. It lays in wait for a minnow or something to come over and grab it. Except he grabbed my towel. This is one of my favorites right here. It was on the cover of Tide magazine, the CCA publication. And it's, you know, shows how we have the ability to protect these fish. And so just basically a juvenile speckled trout. And again, coming in tight to tell the story. You know, this is how we use bait and everything, our lures. The shrimp. And you can see how that sun helps separate that trout from the background. It wouldn't look like that if it was over against the dark water. Working with children to get them educated. We work with scouts and children because we're all getting older and we got to have somebody to replace us down the road. This is bringing in crab trap, and this is Brian Frazier's talent. I don't know Brian. Brian's also on the board. brings a lot of benefits, I gotta tell you. So that's Brian Slavin, one of our board members, and they're bringing in a crab trap. Young kid on my pier did casting. This was another Tide magazine cover, and this is in Laguna Madre. We're out in the middle of that bay, but if you're familiar with Laguna Madre, it's only 3 foot deep, basically. So if there was a potential, so I felt out, jumped out in the boat and got my picture. This is in San Luis Pass. And this picture, I'm literally laying down, my elbows in the sand with the ultra wide lens to pick up everything. So you have a wide lens. If you don't have a wide lens, and you get in time to get shot because you don't need a lot of distracting elements in the picture. That's all we needed. He's in that fish. I don't know if you've ever seen a Vietnamese come down there, but on high tide, they go out and collect snails, which they eat. But you gotta watch the Vietnamese, and I'm not picking on them or anything, but they eat pretty much everything, it seems. And they'll eat your bird's eggs down with the not the pelicans, but the skimmers and things like that on those little rooks. And they'll gather them up, take them home, and cook them up. So it's something to be aware of. This is out gathering crab traps, abandoning crab traps, Texas Coastal Reserve. So we've introduced signage in the picture to give more definition as to what's going on. Bringing a crab trap in. A crabber. Either they call the crabbers call them rock claws or stone crabs, but they call them rock claws. And I knew all the crabbers, well, no, maybe not all, but quite a number of them. And I gave them permission to use my cabin for the bathroom and get out of storms when they get caught on that open water when you get a big thunderstorm comes through. And so they would come by, they saw my boat in front, come by and give me like a third of a bucket of stone crab claws. So they're not a commercial value to them because they don't get enough of them like they do blue crab, but they get them for me and bring them by. And anyhow, I'll tell you a recipe one day. Now, this is the ICW, and this again is an establishing shot, and then here's the shot tighter than the information. We have industrial pictures in here because all of our bays have been shared by industry and by nature and recreational. Y'all probably familiar with this. Drive by quite a bit over on, I think, 332 by Bucky's and that. That's one of the chemical plants here. By itself, not that interesting, but by able to put it into an environment with light, reflects everything. 40 Houston. This was the cover of the 200th anniversary book. That's a dangerous shot to get, I gotta say, because you're on the overpass. One of the police recognized me and stopped and directed traffic correct, which I'll be eternally grateful for. Now, this is something that we're working on at the Christmas Bay Foundation to create. This is the handicap access second level viewing platform. And it has a palapa on it because that's what the Missouri County parks have on there. So we wanted to match in there. Brian Fraser is working with this. They need to get a contract signed with TPW, and this should be going up next year or so, where the kayak launch is off the Blue Water Highway, a little bit west of Key Largo. But there's no handicap access viewing platform on the upper Texas coast that I've been able to find. And so we think that this was designed by an architect buddy of mine. His kid grew up with me at the cabin, and he designed the hygiene facilities on the International Space Station. So he was a little overqualified, but he did a good job because he had been at the base for so many years. And this is David Moore's sculpture of the 1900 Hurricane Dallas prior to the earth, before the seawall. And the sculpture is 10 feet tall. It's about 20-something feet down to the from the bottom of the seawall. So look at how high that up here. So you've got about 40-foot weight. And there's a funny little story goes with that. I used to bring one of my guys that worked with me. He was about a taco short of 260 pounds. And he would go with me to help keep track of me and my gear. And so we saw this happening. And I said, Tomas, we need to get a picture of that. He goes, sure, yeah, we got to do that. Well, the wind's blowing 80 with 100-mile-an-hour gusts. And I don't know if you know much about wind, but at 80 miles an hour, that'll flatten me. And so I said, come on, let's go out there and get that. And so basically, we ran slightly upwind from it. I grabbed Tomas and put my camera on his shoulder, and we're being blown down the seawall. Literally. The water's got a little layer on the seawall, and we're literally shooting down the seawall. And we get to exactly where we are. Fortunately, we timed it just right. And everything hit. I got the shot. Tomas says, Jim, I think it's time to go. And that's it for me. Time to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was great.
Are you standing on it again?
No, I'm just trying to get it out of my pocket.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
it's kind of extemporaneous. I didn't have anything prepared.
Okay, so if you're interested in the two products, C. Luann